Are you ready to hoist the colors? Now, time for the most in-depth look at the world of ECU athletics. Welcome in to Hoist the Colors with your host, Stephen Igo on 94.3 The Game. Watch the show live on Facebook and at 943thegame.com. Now, here's your host, Stephen Igo.
All right, welcome into today's edition of Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game. We are live on YouTube, live on Facebook, live on the IBX Media app. If you've got a question, a comment, a concern, let us know. We'll get to it. We'll answer it live on today's program. It is a Wednesday of game week. We got ECU's home opener coming up this Saturday, 4 o'clock kickoff on ESPNU. Pirates, of course, excited about being back at home. We'll get into that discussion, how much of a difference that can make, especially with a young and inexperienced team. Philip Pilkington is behind the glass today. He's producing. We're going to get Bobby Harward, Hoist the Colors analyst, on here shortly in our next segment. But we were out at Mike Houston's press conference, weekly press conference on Tuesday, and we learned some things as we bring Philip in to start the show. And, some unfortunate news with an injury to Kerry King. Some positive news as well, just as Coach Houston reviewed the film from the game and his coaching staff. Of course, they've moved on to Marshall. We continue to talk about Michigan, and we'll talk about a lot about why the Marshall game is so key to ECU's season later today with Bobby. But, Philip, any big takeaways for you coming out of yesterday's press availability? And, of course, we talked to some of the players as well, Dustin Hall, Taylor Jackson, and also Marlon Gunn Jr., the running back. So, I know the guys are ready to be back home, but anything stand out to you from yesterday's press availability?
Mine really had to do with our conversation with Dustin Hall and just how he talked about how when he first showed up here on campus, this is one of those teams you almost kind of have to earn their respect, which that's a good thing. That shows how well-rounded this team is and, how much faith the coaching staff has in all their current players and the guys who've been in the program and how much faith they have in each other, but how Dustin feels like he has been able to earn that respect, move into that leadership role, because you need that out of a center. Because at the end of the day, the center is the quarterback of the offensive line, and that center-quarterback relationship is so vital in the sport of football. And so to hear that he's in that position both on the field and, mentally, verbally, in the locker room I think is a huge thing for this offensive line and for this offense. And it helps that, he's been a player before, that he started a lot of games at South Florida. This is not a guy who's only played unmeaningful snaps late in football games. So I think this is very vital for this offense.
Yeah, I was impressed. And I talked to Dustin shortly after he committed to East Carolina back in the summer. He went to Duke for a semester, interestingly enough, and it was a scenario where he transferred from South Florida. He had the familiarity with Alan Mogridge, the new offensive line coach at ECU. He told me he kind of got caught up in the allure of Power 5 football and wanted to give it a shot. He went through spring practice at Duke, didn't really like it, came to ECU, and now he's your starting center and sounds like a leader up front. But you could just tell he carries himself the right way. He fits the ECU mentality. And I thought Marlon Gunn had one of the best quotes of the day, talking about the boneyard, and basically says whenever he gets down on himself, he looks up to the boneyard and is like, that could easily be me. So then he's glad to continue to play football after that. And Taylor Jackson, another business-oriented guy as well. And we also had the conversation with Taylor, who's a defensive player, about going up against former ECU offensive lineman Trent Holler. We had Joe Sampson on the show yesterday on Tuesday's program. And he made the point that, Trent Holler has played meaningful snaps at ECU. He also probably knows some ins and outs of the East Carolina offense. And so I'm sure there's some scouting report things he's trying to share with Marshall. I'm sure ECU's trying to share some things. But it sounds like, Philip, at least from Taylor, that Trent, while, of course, both sides are going to want to win the game, it almost is kind of going to be like a friendly rivalry in the trenches on Saturday with him snapping the ball to the Marshall quarterback. But there's going to be some heads banging, I think, up front on Saturday for those guys.
There is, but it almost kind of reminds you of a high school football game in a way, where you probably grew up playing rec basketball or whatever with some of these kids, and you've been friends with them for a long time, and then you got to go in there and battle in the trenches with them. I know both of our closest high schools to me growing up geographically. I went to elementary school with some of those kids, so I kind of know how they feel.
unfortunate news coming out of the press conference. Kerry King will miss the season with a knee injury suffered in practice last week, and highly unfortunate from the standpoint of Kerry was probably going to start, and Coach Houston said he was going to start the season opener, and he had moved, kind of between some different positions at receiver. He's worked in the slot, he's worked at Z, he's worked at X, and he had such a good offseason, such a consistent offseason. He's always had the talent. He's kind of waited for this moment, and unfortunately just caught a ball, went down in practice last week with a knee injury, will miss the season. This is his 4th year in the program. He could get a medical redshirt, still have 3 years of eligibility left. He's also had a COVID season, but anytime you lose a guy to a season-ending injury, it's just it's a heartbreaker. Coach Houston said it was very difficult for him to accept. Obviously, this is part of football, part of sports. It's probably one of the worst sides of it. These injuries, it's a physical game, but it especially stinks, Philip, when it happens in practice and, usually kind of a non-contact or a freak deal. And, there's question marks for ECU at receiver. We'll get into that with Bobby here shortly, but there's question marks at receiver right now, and Kerry King, the absence of him only leaves another one.
Yeah, it definitely does. And we kind of mentioned it on Monday, how we thought the receiver room looked deep on Saturday, but no one really emerged as that guy. And if you look at past reps, Kerry King, I think, out of this receiver room, other than maybe Jalen Johnson, probably has the most reps in a Pirate uniform. If it's not him, it's Tyler Savage, who we also did not see this past Saturday. So the experienced guys are not the guys on the field, and I think that's got a lot to do with it. I think there's a lot of potential in this receiver room, but at the end of the day, you need that guy who's been there. The guy who led the team in receptions was Jarrett Gardner. He did see significant play in his time at Duke. He's second year in the program, but didn't see a lot of reps at receiver last year. I think he was on the kickoff return team, but he only played in 4 or 5 games actually as a wide receiver.
All right, there's Philip Pilkington. I'm Stephen Igo. Let's get a break in. We'll come back. We're going to try to get Bobby Harward on the show. We were trying to get him at the top of the hour, had some technical difficulties. So you can get those ironed out. We'll get him back on the other side. You're listening to Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game. We'll be right back. We'll continue our Michigan recap and Marshall preview with Bobby.
A huge selection of new Toyotas is ready to go at Greenville Toyota. Rush in for the one you want before it's gone. Camrys, just $269 a month. RAV4s, ready to go for just $289 a month. Now at Greenville Toyota.
Acre Station Meat Farm, along with Lane Angus Beef, bring you farm to fork beef.
Stock your freezers now with affordable beef boxes, just in time for the grilling season.
Farm to fork beef brings quality local beef to your family. From your traditional butcher shop, Acre Station Meat Farm. Come on down to Acre Station Meat Farm and find out why we're #1 in fresh cuts and friendly service.
Acre Station Meat Farm, Highway 32 North, Pinetown.
Other restaurants claim their food is fresh and fast, but are they friendly? At Moore's, you're treated like family the minute you walk into their doors. With locations in Winterville, New Bern, Swansboro, Morehead City, and Jacksonville. We've been practicing what we preach since 1945. At Moore's, our barbecue is slow cooked and smoked over real wood daily until it's so tender it's falling off the bone. Combined with our fresh chicken, cooked-to-order seafood, and homemade fixins, we're sure you'll agree. If it's not Moore's, it's less.
At GoEco, we don't just supply the office space. We create solutions for any environment. Our state-of-the-art commercial-grade video display is perfect for watching film with the team. From film study to the field, elevate your game with GoEco.
storm season is approaching. North Carolina weather can damage your roof, and before long, a small leak can turn into a big problem. Your home is one of your biggest investments, so protect it with Wells Home Improvements.
We work with all insurance companies for a hassle-free roof installation experience. Call us today and get 10% off your roof installation when you mention this commercial.
252-227-8403 or visit us online at wellshomeimprovements.com. Wells Home Improvements. Local, honest, dependable.
New Toyotas are ready to go at Greenville Toyota. Shop a huge selection with new inventory arriving daily. Don't see what you want? We'll find it or order it for you. Plus, fresh trades are rolling in and ready to go for delivery today. Rush to Greenville Toyota.
Climb aboard as we set sail and hoist the colors.
Arr, matey!
Back to the show with Stephen Igo on 94.3 The Game.
All right, welcome back into the program. It is a Wednesday, September 6th edition of the show. 3 days out from ECU's home opener against the Marshall Thundering Herd. It's a big game, and it's a critical game, I think, for East Carolina's really bowl hopes, that sort of stuff, in terms of really turning their season the right direction. We'll get into that discussion. We've got Bobby Harward on the phone line. Bobby usually joins us via video, but today we got him over the phone. He is presented by Sup Dogs. Check him out downtown Greenville. By the way, the Sup Show will debut tomorrow at 5 o'clock. We'll have multiple student athletes on the Sup Show. That'll be streamed live online at Sup Dogs, so check that out tomorrow on your ECU Athletics Facebook, Twitter pages, all that sort of stuff. Bobby, we've gotten my take, we've gotten Joe's take, we've gotten Philip's take on the Michigan game. Let's put a bow on that. Then we'll turn forward to Marshall. When you look at kind of the Michigan game, what we expected going in, how it came out, what were your big takeaways?
The biggest takeaway to me was how well the defensive front played. I think everything else went about as expected. I knew the offense was going to struggle to move the football, struggle to get points on the board. Part of that being the strength of Michigan's defense and how talented they are. The other part, having so many new pieces offensively. But my biggest takeaway was just I was really impressed with the front seven defensively for the Pirates. I thought they did a great job of managing the run and taking away the run, because honestly that was one of Michigan's strong suits last year. So to really go through that game and limit them rushing wise to 122 yards, 3.9 yards average per rush, that was pretty impressive.
Let's start with the offense, and we'll start with the quarterback situation, Bobby. And I think you said you kind of wanted to see just the offense be able to function, or Mason, go in there, look somewhat competent, not completely overwhelmed. And I thought that, early on he struggled, and to me, didn't have the zip on the ball that I've seen him throw with in practice. I've really seen him throw it towards the end of the game. Now, some of that was due to Michigan's pressure, but there were throws there to be made that he just didn't throw with conviction. Obviously, the interception was one of those. What did you make of Mason Garcia and also Alex Flynn coming off the bench from your vantage point?
To me, that's what's interesting about Mason is watching him. I know those drives were quick, and ECU was off the field pretty quickly, and I think it was a great move strategically to make the switch to Flynn in terms of slowing the game down some so we don't get 50 hung on us. But Mason, outside of, he underthrew some passes, underthrew some deep balls, missed on those. But it wasn't like he was completely just flustered or overwhelmed. I don't know if just the nerves and kind of some hesitation, seeing live bullets, outside of a practice setting, if that's what caused some of that. I did think all of his possessions, though, it seemed like those drives were pretty quick. The clock didn't milk, the clock didn't run. Whereas when Alex Flynn came in, they were able to take some of that clock down. I did think Alex looked in control as well. He surprised me with his legs on a few runs as well. It's going to be interesting. I know the saying, and you've already said it before, if you got two quarterbacks, do you really have any? So that's what will be interesting going into Marshall, how they balance. I'm expecting Mason to get the first series of the game, but do they, rotate every 2 or 3 series? Do they let him get in a groove? If Mason comes out hot, do they let him take him the rest of the way? Or what is that going to look like this Saturday?
So, Bobby, you were on the staff in 2015 when Blake Kemp and James Summers under Ralph McNeil, and Dave Nickel was the offensive coordinator. It was a two quarterback system for basically that entire year because Kurt Benkert, of course, blew out his knee the week of the game, or if not, maybe a few days before that. It was, basically you also had Philip Nelson who was ruled ineligible, so it was like y'all were kind of scrambling a bit. This isn't maybe as bad of a situation because I feel like Mason and Alex are probably better quarterbacks than Blake and Summers were. But what do you remember about that year and just kind of how the staff handled it from week to week? Because it was basically the storyline almost all season long.
Yeah, we kind of knew every week that we were playing too. We didn't expect at any point one person to kind of take over and take the realms at quarterback because, like you said, after Benkert blew out his knee, we were kind of in a tight predicament with Philip Nelson being ineligible. And James, so here's the thing, too, with those two guys. Blake Kemp, they brought in just to have another arm. He was never expected to play at any point, play quarterback. He was just kind of be a scout team guy, an extra arm throughout, the preseason and stuff and through practice. And, in that emergency scenario, maybe we could rely on him. Now we had that emergency scenario and needed to use him, but that was kind of the expectation bringing Blake in. With James, he was recruited as a wide receiver. And so knowing he had some quarterback experience, we thought, all right, let's move him over, see what he does with the ball in his hand. And that's where there were two different players in the sense that James Summers was elite with the football in his hand. He, was able to make guys miss. We really just used him to run the football. And then Blake, vice versa, brought him in the pass. It helped out in the Virginia Tech game where it was super rainy and storming and whatnot. Where we were able to just utilize James running the football. But for the most part, we wanted to try to use Blake as much as possible. And then, knowing we're going to bring James in for a few series to run the ball, we were hoping throughout the year that he would be able to pick up the offense enough in the route combinations and those sort of things to be able to utilize more in the passing game, but that never came to fruition.
Yeah, and obviously that team was still very competent and very, defensive oriented and running oriented at times, but Blake did have some good passing performances, and you guys were a few plays away from 6, 7, 8 wins. Do you feel like, I think the coaching staff is obviously going to do their best to keep this from being like a distraction, even though the reality is, look, we're talking about it because the fans want to talk about it. It's the most prominent position on the field. There's more that goes into winning a game than just quarterback play, but it is the most important part of every team. So we're going to talk about it until this is kind of settled or we have a better idea. But like, how much of a worry is it for the staff that it becomes an issue like in the locker room, or is that an overblown factor?
I think that's an overblown factor. In my experience, even though, we had to rely on James and Blake, I don't think it ever tore up the locker room. It never raised questions. People were bummed when Benkert blew out his knee, but they kind of had that next man up mentality. They trusted the coaches. They trusted their teammates and Blake and Summers. And those two guys, credit to them, they did a good job of leading in the locker room as well and developing those relationships even more so when they were called upon as leaders and quarterbacks of the offense. So I think it's a little overblown, especially because those guys are prepped throughout practice. They see, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, even Sunday nights, they're getting reps with those guys. They know what to expect. So I do think it's a little bit overblown.
Bobby Harward is with us on the live line. He will be with us every Wednesday throughout the season, former ECU football staff member. Does a great job now as an analyst for Hoist the Colors. Also a very good father who I believe his daughter started preschool today, like mine did. My son struggled with it, Bobby, but we'll get through it. When you look at this, we talk about kind of takeaways from the first game, and I've given my thoughts, and you given some of yours, but like I almost just feel like at this point they need to go play Marshall and App, and then we'll really know what this team has, because for the most part the opener kind of went how we expected it. Maybe not as many points scored on either side, but doesn't the real barometer kind of start this week?
I think so. And I'd be curious, pose this question to some friends. Is Michigan the best team that East Carolina has ever played? as a program. I mean, I think doing some research, I couldn't find a higher ranked opponent. I know they played some good teams as an independent, but Michigan may be the best team that we've played as a program in our program's history. So it's hard to make that the measuring point. So I think, let's play Marshall this week. And really looking at the schedule, I think after Marshall, App, Gardner-Webb, and Rice, those next 4 games here, I think we'll have a pretty good idea. Marshall and App should be pretty tight games. I think Gardner-Webb is really good for a FCS opponent. And then, Rice isn't terrible. I know they got blown out by Texas, but they got JT Daniels and they got some pieces there recruiting the state of Texas. So I think we'll have a better idea of what we're looking at for this Pirate 2023 team as a whole once we get through the month of September.
We'll maybe circle back, talk more about the quarterbacks, kind of what to expect this coming weekend. But, I kind of made the title of this show today, Bobby, why this game is so vital to ECU's season, the Marshall game I'm talking about, just because it feels like, and I wrote this in the offseason, to me, this was the key swing game on ECU's schedule. And I did 3 swing games, and this was the first one because home opener, realistically, we knew they were going to probably lose against Michigan. We knew this game is kind of a toss-up. The App State game is kind of a toss-up as well. I think if they play today, App would probably be a small favorite. We'll see what happens with them versus UNC this weekend. But if you drop this game, all of a sudden you're 0-2, you're going on the road, the back's against the wall. I mean, the season is not over. We saw ECU in 21 win at Marshall with an 0-2 record and turn the season around. But if you want to put yourself in line for, maybe less pressure going into that App game or set up a huge game at App either way, I think this is a not a must win, but you surely would like to have it, right, Bobby?
Absolutely. If you start at 0-2, you got to think you got 10 games remaining. You got to go 6-4 the rest of the way to even make a bowl game. So that makes that pressure of making a bowl game that much stronger. Marshall, I know these guys on this roster really haven't experienced that rivalry, but Marshall is a rival for ECU, and I think to have some bragging rights over that as well is going to be nice to have for the fan base and just give you some confidence going on the road the following week to App State. So this is going to be really a big game for the Pirates to get some confidence back. And I'm really intrigued to see how they respond. This is where, to me, having Mike Houston as a head coach is so beneficial because I think he does such a great job. That locker room is strong right now, and I'm interested to see how they respond, and I'm expecting them to respond in a strong way on Saturday.
East Carolina Marshall, I think one of the best games non-conference-wise that ECU can schedule. And I know just from talking with some sources today, they're expecting a crowd in the mid to upper 30,000s, depending on walk-up, especially with the students, especially with the weather. When you sell less than 15,000 season tickets, it's hard to get to that 40K mark. And maybe if the weather turns out to be brilliant and a bunch of students show up, they can close in on that. But I think either way, the fans that are there are going to be into the game. And you look at this series, it's been an awesome series. I mean, obviously the games, the two teams are linked for a very bad tragedy, as we know, the 1970 plane crash. But you look at the most recent games, the games on the field have been phenomenal. I mean, last time in 21, we all know what happened there. You guys were on the staff and from 2010 through 2013, y'all were able to beat them twice in Greenville, ECU 7-0 all time against Marshall and Greenville. The game that I don't think gets talked about enough is that 2012 game, 65-59 in double overtime. And I remember Andrew Bodenheimer catching a touchdown in the corner of the end zone and rolling over my laptop bag. That was an interesting experience. What do you remember kind of about this rivalry when you were a coach with this team?
It was fun. It was always going to be a tightly contested matchup. You mentioned that game here in double overtime. I remember that Bodenheimer catch really well. I remember, getting into overtime as well. It just the one horror memory I have from that series is going up to Marshall with the chance to go to the conference championship game and kind of laying an egg there. Some things they exposed of us defensively, running the butt of the tackle and washing our 4 technique down, caused us to do a lot of self-reflection in the off season, which ended up being a good thing. But that's even going up to Marshall and, hearing the fan base yell at you as you're running up to the press box, some of those things that make college football fun, because it's important to the fans. It's a rivalry that's important to both sides. I'm hoping we can get a crowd of over 40,000. I'm a little bummed I'm not going to be able to make it personally, especially I finally have found some Pirate Brew in the grocery stores, so I was excited to enjoy that tailgating. But I have some good buddies at a tailgate. They call themselves the Old Gold, and they got a pretty legit tailgate that I know they're going to hold it down for me while I'm going to miss the game on Saturday.
Yeah, I still remember Sebastian Telefero and some of those guys, Rakeem Cato, just carving that ECU defense up in 2013. I drove up to Huntington on Thanksgiving and could not find a single place to eat, obviously, since everything was closed due to the holiday. But that was not a fun trip. So let's at least the last time I was there in 21, it went much better, Bobby. But I don't know. I mean, have you done any Marshall research just to get a feel for this team? Like a very good defensive team last year. They do have a new coordinator. Offensively, they seem to be built around the run. We all know Rasheen Ali just absolutely torched ECU in 21. So do you kind of have a feel for how this game might go Saturday?
Yeah, I'm honestly shocked that I don't know if we're still the underdog, but that the line started in Marshall's favor. That was kind of surprising to me. Looking at seeing what they did against Albany and knowing how their offense struggled last year, it seems like it's continuing to struggle this year. I mean, they didn't get their first points on the board against an FCS opponent and an average FCS opponent at that in Albany until the second half. So obviously they still have some offensive deficiencies and some issues there. I know their quarterback is returning, but he's still young. And yeah, they just seem to be struggling. I'm expecting ECU to bounce back, like I said, in a strong way. I think the defense is really going to, hold Marshall. I'm expecting them to hold Marshall under 10 points, honestly. I'm just very unimpressed with the Marshall offense the last year and a half. Now, defensively is a different story. I expect it to be a low-scoring ball game. And I know, Powers they have on the defensive line is pretty solid. But outside of that, I don't know what much else they have defensively. I know they've played well as a unit. I also know that they, just like ECU, are bringing in a lot of transfers and trying to get that to gel and mesh together as well.
Yeah, a ton of transfers. They do got some good edge rushers, which we'll see if ECU can run the ball better this week. We'll kind of have some keys to victory in a little bit. Before we take a break, Bobby, I want to ask you, Trent Holler started for ECU or played a lot for ECU's offensive line in 21, also played some in 2020. He's now a starting center for Marshall. And I think, Joe is planning to ask Donnie Kirkpatrick this on Wednesday following practice. What's the concern level with Trent Holler? Maybe it's not as big of a concern since there's a new offensive line coach now, but maybe him knowing some of the ins and outs of ECU's offense and maybe sharing that with Marshall.
I'll say this. It's funny you bring that question up, being that it's against Marshall, because I always go when this question is brought up or I'm talking to people about this idea of playing someone that kind of knows what your calls are. When we played Marshall up in, I believe it was 2012, where we got smashed up there, we knew when they were running and passing. we had some tendencies, and we had Zeke Bigger at middle linebacker signaling to the defense. He would touch his hips if it was a run. He would touch his helmet if it was a pass. So we knew what was coming, and they still gashed us offensively. So to me, that's a non-factor because you still have to line up and play. Like I said, we had an advantage in 2012, and it did not help us. I don't know how much it helps because the other thing is the game is going so fast, and it's hard. Not only do you have to wait for the opponent to call the play, you then process that, have your play call. So there's just a lot that goes into it. There may be some tendency things that Trent could help with, but I don't think it's much of a factor, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Marshall that day had 539 yards of offense. So I guess it really didn't matter.
That was probably what made that game so frustrating, because going in, I was so confident. I was like, oh, man. I mean, we felt confident as a staff, like, man, we have a jump on them. And even after the first two series, everything was playing right. Like, when we went back and watched the All-22 film, and when there's cuts, when you can see Zeke making the touch, he called everything right. It just did not matter scheme-wise. We still had to execute, and we didn't execute that day.
He is Bobby Harward. He's brought to you by Sup Dogs today. Let's get a break in. We'll come back. We'll talk about keys to victory, maybe make some predictions as well. We'll also take a look around college football, the Week 2 schedule, what we're looking forward to. Bobby's going to be joining us every Wednesday throughout the season. We'll be right back with more Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.
Air Service is back at Pitt Greenville Airport, offering safe, clean facilities and flights from American Airlines. That means the short commute, quicker lines, and better prices that get you where you're going fast and easy. See it for yourself. There's great things inside at Pitt Greenville Airport.
The best burgers around. Everyone loves a thick, juicy, and fresh burger. Tiebreakers in Greenville, plus the all-new Tiebreakers in Winterville, do real burgers better than anybody. So don't just go to any burger-themed restaurant chain. It's time to break the chain and eat local. Tiebreakers, real burgers at its best.
Everybody loves burgers.
Living easy is the sound of children laughing as you make memories with neighbors and friends. It's the sound of nothing at all. It's the smell of the salt air. Hear the waters against the marsh grass. See the beauty of our coast. Bow Coast, located in Beaufort, North Carolina. Southern Living's best small town.
Just because voice-over IP telephones are the latest technology in the telephone world doesn't mean they're the right choice for you and your business. Whether your internet provider is unable to support a voice-over IP phone system, or you don't have a need for high-tech features and simply want to stick with a traditional system, Spain Telecom is here to help. Spain Telecom offers a variety of services to keep your business connected and competitive. We're confident we can find the right phone system for you and your business, a system that addresses all your communication needs. Looking for a new phone system that won't break the bank? In addition to new systems, Spain Telecom also offers gently used systems that are in great shape and can save you money. No matter your needs, Spain Telecom has a solution for you. Whether it's voice over IP, on-premise systems, new or used, give us a call at 252-353-2006 and let Spain Telecom help you with your communications needs.
Pizza? Ooh.
Yes. All pineapple.
No.
What's wrong with pineapple on pizza?
I only eat pizza with pizza things.
That makes sense. Pineapple is a pizza thing.
Also makes sense. Is it though?
This tastes great.
That we agree on.
Let's agree to agree. Pepsi Zero Sugar tastes great.
Can't you just pick off the pineapple?
Air Service is back at Pitt Greenville Airport, offering safe, clean facilities and flights from American Airlines. That means the short commute, quicker lines, and better prices that get you where you're going fast and easy. See it for yourself. There's great things inside at Pitt Greenville Airport.
The Pirates play here. Arr! This is Hoist the Colors Radio with Stephen Igo.
Yes! That was so good!
On 94.3 The Game.
All right, welcome back into this Wednesday, September 6th edition of Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game. It is a Bobby Harward Wednesday. He's brought to you by Sup Dogs. Again, check us out tomorrow live from Sup Dogs in downtown Greenville. We'll have the Sup Show from 5 to 6 p.m. I know we've got a few baseball, women's basketball players. Also, we're going to have some other sports as well. It'll be a show to highlight the student-athlete experience at East Carolina. It'll be live-streamed on the ECU Athletics social media pages, also through the ECU Sports Network as well. So we'll have that for you Thursday live from Sup Dogs, 5 to 6 p.m. All right, Bobby rejoins us over the phone, and we are going to circle back. We just talked about some ECU Marshall and how much we like this rivalry. We're going to circle back with some some keys to victory, predictions, that sort of stuff here at the end of his segment. But let's dive into kind of college football as a whole right now, Bobby, because this is an ECU-centric show, but I like talking about the whole landscape, and maybe we'll even hit on some NFL as well as your Commanders get ready to take the field, along with your I know you're a big Panther guy as well. So we'll start first with college and some big games this weekend. The Week 2 slate, I think, a lot better than Week 1. Notre Dame is visiting NC State as a highlight matchup. You've got Nebraska and Colorado as kind of a game where who knows if Colorado can follow up what they did. App State at UNC, SMU at Oklahoma is an intriguing game. Oregon's at Texas Tech, of course, Texas and Bama. Any big action or I say first, any big takeaways from Week 1 outside of ECU that you had?
The Blue Devils, that unfriendly confine of Wallace Wade Stadium we talked about last week. I mean, kudos to the fans there. They did show out in all seriousness, but I mean, Clemson, that second half, they did not punt and they did not score points. They moved up and down the field and then shot themselves in the foot. So a rough start for Garrett Riley in his debut. Keeping it kind of in state. NC State did not look as good as I was expecting. I know they were playing at UConn, which is not always an exciting place to play, just from a morale standpoint. But they were not as impressive. And Deion Sanders in Colorado, that kind of shocked me. But it was an exciting game. It was probably, in my opinion, the funnest game of the weekend.
Are you, not to turn this into the Deion hour because it's being talked about enough nationally, but do you feel like they lay an egg this week against Nebraska, or do they keep this train rolling?
I think they keep the train rolling at least another week. Again, Nebraska is coached by Matt Rule, who I despise. So maybe it's more internally just hoping that Nebraska gets blown out. But they weren't impressive against Minnesota. I mean, honestly, Big Ten football is probably some of the most boring college football that you can watch, in my opinion. But that Nebraska-Minnesota game I watched last Thursday night was not exciting. I think Colorado brings a lot more to the table offensively than what Minnesota brings. So I'm expecting probably a 2-3 score game in advantage of Colorado. So Colorado wins by 20 plus.
Look around the college football landscape as well. A game I didn't mention, Ole Miss is visiting Tulane. Yulman Stadium, if it can be, it will be rocking at 3:30 on ESPN2. And they took care of business against a very quality South Alabama team. And you know, again, 1 week of action, but UTSA losing to Houston. And Tulane, you know, kind of looking like maybe the favorite in the league early on. I know this is a game I'll be looking forward to. Any gut feeling for Tulane, Ole Miss? I mean, I feel like we're going to see a lot of points scored in that one.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was going to say. I'm curious to see how Tulane's defense holds up against Ole Miss. I think it'll be a fun atmosphere. I'm excited for Tulane to be able to host an opponent, top 20 opponent like Ole Miss. I think it's great for the recognition nationally of Tulane. I think they're getting a little bit more respect now as they've been more consistent. And Willie Fritz is just a heck of a ball coach. I was selfishly as an ECU fan, really hoping that he would take the Georgia Tech job just to give us a clearer path to a championship at some point in the American. But it's great to have him in the conference. He's such a quality coach, and excited to see how they hold up from an offensive line standpoint as well, because those guys, SEC defensive linemen, are obviously pretty big. So want to see how they hold up front as well. I think that will tell us how much Tulane can take away or take over this American conference and run away with it if they hold their own against Ole Miss, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a big measuring stick game for them. And we touched on App State struggling with Gardner Webb in Week 1. Now they turn around. Their quarterback's going to miss a few weeks. The guy who came in, Aguilar, threw for 4 touchdowns. Now they're going to UNC, which I thought UNC's defensive line just absolutely got after South Carolina this past weekend. That was one of the most surprising things to me. I thought South Carolina would be able to move the football. And so now you got this scenario, hey, App State usually plays well in these games. UNC coming off a big win. You think there's any chance the Mountaineers upset North Carolina? By the way, a 5:15 kickoff time on the ACC network. What an awkward time, but that should be a good one as well.
Well, at least they're not on the CW. I know the ACC is going back to the CW, so at least they're not there. But to answer your question, if I think App has the chance to pull an upset, before last week and watching UNC play last week, before seeing them play last week, I would have thought App State had a chance. After watching UNC's defense and how they played against South Carolina, I don't think it'll be very close. It may be close early in the first quarter and a half, but then I think you'll see UNC pull away. I mean, think about it. North Carolina had 17 sacks the whole season last year, 14 games, and then they had 9 sacks on Saturday in one game. So they had like 60% of their sack total from a year before in one game.
That's wild. So it'll be a very good slate on Saturday. We'll have Joe Sampson in studio Friday. We'll make our game picks. We'll also make some NFL picks as well as the league gets back underway this weekend. And Bobby, I know you spent time the last few years rooting for the Panthers, the Commanders as well, were your team growing up. I know that the ownership situation kind of turned you off for a bit, but now that Snyder's out, are you back on the Washington bandwagon, or are you still rolling with the Panthers?
I'm still rolling with the Panthers from now. I'm cautiously optimistic. I would say this: if they had stayed as the old name, I would probably 100% be back on ship. But even watching them now, it's not the same. I am more intrigued, I will say, seeing this ownership change. Even talking to my dad last weekend or the weekend before, just the sigh of relief, because you do not have to wait for Dan Snyder to do something stupid again, is really nice. So I'm intrigued. I know they're sold out week 1. I don't know the last time they've had a sellout. And actually be their fans. So that is exciting as well. Thankfully, they're matched up against the Cardinals, who are going to be competing for the number 1 pick. So that should work in their favor.
If the Commanders cannot beat the Cardinals, that's going to make for a long season. The Panthers opening at the Falcons, and you don't want to make too much of a week 1 game, but I feel like the division, the NFC South, is just so underwhelming on paper. And the Panthers have a shot to win it. The Falcons maybe have a chance as well, along with the Saints, and who knows what the Buccaneers will do, after losing Tom Brady. But it feels like this division's wide open, and every game is going to be critical. So, what are the expectations for Panther fans? Of course, we got a lot of Panther fans listening as well, going into that opener.
I think number 1, does Bryce Young look like he belongs? Number 2, does the offensive line improve and show out better than what they did in the preseason, because they looked pretty poor in the preseason? The other thing I'm interested to see is, does Brian Burns' contract get done between now and Sunday? You got to remember, the Panthers and GM Scott Fitterer, they turned down 2 first-round picks last year to the Rams for Brian Burns. They turned down the opportunity to add him in that trade with the Bears for the first pick, and instead added DJ Moore. So now Brian Burns and his agent know their value, and it seems like he's holding in, whereas he's in the meetings and stuff like that, just not practicing right now. Who knows if he'll play Sunday, but does that contract get done? To your point about how below average the NFC South is, I picked in all of my fantasy leagues the Panthers defense, because I'm expecting them to still be strong like last year. And then you got to think they're playing the Falcons and the Buccaneers offense twice in a season. So that's 4 games right there against below average offenses. And then you got the Saints for 2 games, who really knows what their offense is going to look like, Derek Carr. So really you got 6 games against below average offenses. And so that's why I picked up the Panthers defense for my fantasy leagues.
Well, Bobby, we're playing the AFC South too, and they have horrendous offenses. I mean, I think the Texans, the Colts, and the Titans all have bad offenses, so there's 9 games. So I think that's smart on your end.
Yeah, that's true, and rookie quarterbacks too. You talk about Stroud with the Texans, and then Richardson with the Colts, so that's 2 rookie quarterbacks. Tannehill doesn't scare me in Tennessee at all. Really, the only threat would be Jacksonville. So that's another good point, is the AFC South matching up with them.
I may need to drive to Vegas and lay some money on the Panthers win total with the way you guys are talking.
Or just drive to Virginia and get out your phone and put it on one of those apps. I mean, Virginia's not that far away.
That's true. That's true. We'll see what happens this weekend. Hey, some pretty good hype around the Panthers this preseason, so we'll see if they follow up, see how they do. All right, let's circle back to ECU, Bobby, before we get you out of here. Keys to victory, of course, I feel like it starts with the quarterback situation. You got to get some good play there. What are you looking for at that position, and then any other big keys as far as, the Pirates getting their first win this Saturday?
I'm looking – I'll try to stay away from quarterback to start out. I'm looking first at the run game. I want to see how we do offensively running the football. I found it interesting, watching the Michigan game, I was kind of multitasking, getting our nursery ready. We're expecting baby number 3 here in October. So I had the game on the TV in the nursery, painting, kind of going back and forth. And to hear, I think you had reported this, that a lot of our first down plays, it looked like they were straight runs. But they were actually RPOs. So I want to see how the run game looks. I want to see how we establish the offensive line and setting the line of scrimmage, if we can get some push up front. And then taking it to the quarterback is between Alex Flynn and Mason Garcia, or as Chris Sims likes to say, Max Garcia. Does one of them take over the game? Does one of them kind of get a little jump in the quarterback competition and start to take away or run away with the position? Defensively, I want to see us continue to stop the run. I want to limit them. I know 10 is very ambitious, especially in this day and age of college football. So to me, it will be a win if we can hold Marshall under 17 points.
Marshall and ECU this Saturday at 4 o'clock. The over-under in Vegas, I think, is set around 42, maybe 43, so they're expecting a low-scoring game as well in the high teens to 20, so we'll see how it plays out on Saturday. Bobby, we appreciate the time on this Wednesday. I know we're going to get you in studio here in a couple of weeks, so looking forward to that in-studio debut, but it's been fun catching up every Wednesday, man, and we'll do it again next week.
Great. Sounds good. Thank y'all for having me.
He's Bobby Harward. He's brought to you by Sup Dogs this week. Check him out downtown Greenville. Again, we'll have the Sup Show 5 to 6 p.m. on Thursday featuring ECU student athletes. That will be broadcast and streamed live on the ECU Athletics social media pages. All right, we're going to get our final break in. We'll come back. We may play some audio from yesterday's player interviews, and we'll also wrap things up with Philip Pilkington back in the studio as well. You're listening to Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.
Fifth Street Hardware is the home of the $9 lunch special Tuesday through Fridays. $9 specials every day, including the famous Burger Day on Tuesdays, Flatbread Pizza Wednesday, the famous Fifth Street Hardware Reuben on Thursday, and fried fish or shrimp on Friday. Plus trivia on Wednesday nights and live music every Thursday nights. And the Prime Rib Brunch Buffet has returned on Sundays. You heard that right. The Brunch Buffet with all the great items, including prime rib. Fifth Street Hardware in downtown Greenville.
Tax credits are back. Get a 30% tax credit, up to $2,000 off your new Mitsubishi electric heat pump install. Let Comfort Master help you take advantage of the tax credits with a qualifying Mitsubishi electric ducted heat pump or non-ducted Mitsubishi electric mini splits. Mitsubishi electric mini splits are ideal for bonus rooms, garages, or sunrooms. If you need a new HVAC unit, call Comfort Master today.
Call Comfort Master. Call Comfort Master.
You can't name a lot of things that I didn't do. Stack paper like a book, not a Kindle. You outdated, I'm the one they getting into, and I won't break a sweat. Let's get it, 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 let's get it. Child, please, I don't need a towel, please.
Are you game day ready? Anson Belt, the official belt of ECU Athletics.
Are you ready for a digital hair color revolution? The Color Master Factory by Chi and LG. A masterpiece of innovation, unlimited color formulations, limitless possibilities, long-lasting color. Chi.
This is about you, your family, and the health of all who live in Eastern North Carolina. This is about the transformation of a health system into something more powerful and more human, about creating new ways to treat disease and keep you well. This is about ECU Health, which is to say, it's really all about you. ECU Health. Minds, hearts, purpose.
This is ECU head football coach Mike Houston, and you're listening to Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.
All right, got a few minutes left on today's show. Wanted to quickly hit some player audio before we run out of time. We caught up with Dustin Hall, USF offensive line transfer, new ECU starting center. Here's how that sounded on Tuesday. Dustin, first game as a Pirate, man, is in the book. So you'd obviously played a lot before, but what was it like kind of experiencing that in the big house?
I mean, it was electrifying, honestly. I mean, these guys have opened me with welcome arms ever since I've been here. So just getting a chance to play with those guys for the first time is pretty exciting.
How do you feel like it went? I mean, now you coming in with several new starters here around you, and tough place for that to start. But how do you feel like it went up front?
I mean, I think it went good. That was our first true time playing as five. I mean, that was a first start for two players, our left guard and our right guard. So I thought we did pretty well considering the fact that we've never played together.
Right.
So,
how much do you feel like y'all can grow kind of from the film and just learning from the mistakes, that sort of stuff this week?
There's plenty to get better at. I mean, we left a lot of stuff out there, but it takes all 11. So the five up front, I think, will grow tremendously this week.
Dustin, pretty impressive, no sacks. I probably think that will not happen again against Michigan this year, so that's something to be proud of and something to build on.
Yes, sir. Yep. I mean, like I said, having two guys with their first career starts in college, I mean, that's very impressive.
Coach Houston talked kind of about your leadership up front and kind of walk us through that, because you have played a lot before, but coming into like a new locker room and kind of taking that leadership role.
Like when I first got here, I just kind of kept my head down and worked. I mean, you kind of in a program like this, you have to like earn your respect. So when I finally earned that spot and became more vocal, I felt like, being that we have some young guys, I mean, I've kind of been there, done it. So kind of just bring those guys along with me.
You've been in Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium before as a South Florida Bull. How excited are you to be in Dowdy-Ficklen this Saturday as an East Carolina Pirate?
Very excited. I remember it was a Thursday night game. Conditions were terrible. It was raining, and somehow this place was still electrifying. So I'm excited to see what good conditions and Saturday football game will bring.
Do you feel like you guys as a unit can grow after games, maybe more so than just kind of seeing the same things in practice? Like, you come away after that game thinking like, this will help us a bunch?
100%. I mean, you get great looks in practice. I mean, our scout team does the best that they can, but in all reality, when the things in game time are flying around 10 times faster, I mean, people grow tremendously week by week.
The familiarity with Coach Mogridge, I mean, I know we talked before that kind of played a role in getting you here, but how much has that helped the transition?
It helped a lot. I mean, a lot of the verbiage is the same. I mean, plays are going to be different, but at the same time, they're all similar. He's done a great job, even with these young guys. I mean, helping us all transition together to play as five, so it's been good.
And then acclimating the center, have you enjoyed that? Because I know you played at some of USF, but I know you played guard a lot too.
Right. Honestly, I love being in the middle. I like the control of it. I like to you kind of have a pace of the game. I mean, nothing can happen until you snap it, so I kind of like the ability to slow it down, get everybody on the same page, and let's go.
And obviously working, too, with 2 quarterbacks right now. Could be a 2-quarterback system. Are you trying to coach those guys up to or help them as much as possible?
Yeah, I mean, all of us got to be on the same page, because if we're not on the same page, one person doesn't do his job, it's not going to work. And both Alex and Mason are both great quarterbacks, and every day out here is you compete. I mean, each day you earn your spot to play on Saturday. And I think Coach Kirkpatrick, he's going to put us in the right position to win.
Does a lot of what they're learning, maybe about defenses and what to call, kind of go hand in hand with what you're looking at too?
Oh, for sure. I mean, being a center, you look your eyes deep at safeties before the play even starts. I mean, your checklist is the same as quarterback.
Have you watched much Marshall yet? And if so, kind of what do you see from their defensive front?
Yeah, we watch quite a bit of them. They're a hard playing group, I feel like. Their D-line's really good. They're strong. They're fast. And their linebackers are really strong as well.
That's good.
All right, Dustin.
Thanks, Dustin. Thank you. All right, there is Dustin Hall, South Florida transfer. Again, Coach Houston talked about it yesterday. He has quickly become a leader up front for the Pirates. We'll have more player audio for you later this week as well. Tomorrow on the show, we've got Brian Meador. He will join us in studio. He is the director of video production at East Carolina. Obviously does a great job at the Coaches Show. You see it every Sunday on WNCT. We'll talk about that, kind of some of the features he's got in store. And Brian is just an awesome radio guest. We're going to hit a number of topics with Brian, who has a sports background, a sports reporting background as well. All right, this has been Hoist the Colors. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 12 noon on 94.3 The Game.
This has been Hoist the Colors with your host, Stephen Igo. Tune in weekdays at noon for all things ECU sports. Get a recap of the show at 943thegame.com, on Twitter, Facebook, or anywhere you get your podcasts. We're back tomorrow with more of Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.
R&D Brewing is proud to partner with the ECU Pirates, and now you can enjoy Pirates Brew, the official craft beer of ECU Athletics. Pirates Brew is a carefully curated light beer that embodies the spirit of ECU, a refreshing and easy drinking light beer. Pirates Brew by R&D Brewing is available now at grocery stores, local retailers, and at ECU athletic events.
Head over to your favorite store and enjoy a nice Pirates Brew today, or else you'll walk the plank. Hand me another Pirates Brew. Arr.
Fifth Street Hardware is the home of the $9 lunch special Tuesday through Fridays. $9 specials every day, including the famous Burger Day on Tuesdays, Flatbread Pizza Wednesday, the famous Fifth Street Hardware Reuben on Thursday, and fried fish or shrimp on Friday. Plus trivia on Wednesday nights and live music every Thursday nights. And the Prime Rib Brunch Buffet has returned on Sundays. You heard that right. The Brunch Buffet with all the great items, including prime rib. Fifth Street Hardware in downtown Greenville.
Storm season is approaching. North Carolina weather can damage your roof, and before long, a small leak can turn into a big problem. Your home is one of your biggest investments, so protect it with Wells Home Improvements.
We work with all insurance companies for a hassle-free roof installation experience. Call us today and get 10% off your roof installation when you mention this commercial.
252-227-8403 or visit us online at wellshomeimprovements.com. Wells Home Improvements. Local, honest, dependable.
Living easy is the sound of children laughing as you make memories with neighbors and friends. It's the sound of nothing at all. It's the smell of the salt air. Hear the waters against the marsh grass. See the beauty of our coast. Bow Coast, located in Beaufort, North Carolina. Southern Living's best small town.
Just because voice over IP telephones are the latest technology in the telephone world doesn't mean they're the right choice for you and your business. Whether your internet provider is unable to support a voice over IP phone system, or you don't have a need for high-tech features and simply want to stick with a traditional system, Spain Telecom is here to help. Spain Telecom offers a variety of services to keep your business connected and competitive. We're confident we can find the right phone system for you and your business, a system that addresses all your communication needs. Looking for a new phone system that won't break the bank? In addition to new systems, Spain Telecom also offers gently used systems that are in great shape and can save you money. No matter your needs, Spain Telecom has a solution for you. Whether it's voice over IP, on-premise systems, new or used, give us a call at 252-353-2006 and let Spain Telecom help you with your communications needs.